Overcoming fear. To overcome fear, we must comprehend the real reasons we feel afraid and realize that our fears are pointing to the places within us that need attention. Many humans have taken on the fear-based predator mind belief systems or alien mind control for the purpose of consciousness enslavement. All people that indulge in unrestrained and uncorrected negative emotional states of fear will attract demonic or dark spirits, which generate energetic blockages and cords in our light body. At this critical juncture during the bifurcation shift, each person is choosing if they want to exist in spiritual bondage or freedom. To support this process, we look directly at fear to show us the spiritual lessons we have yet to master inside of ourselves and where darkness is blocking us from finding harmony in our direct relationship with God. As we travel through the pinnacle of the shifting timelines and trigger events, many people are breaking through amnesiac barriers to access the dark contents of the subconscious mind and pain body, where collective fear programming has been stored. People are conditioned to hide from their fears, to avoid the darkness and where they feel pain, and to bury these bones deep beneath the walls of conscious perception in order to forget about them. These unaddressed places within us of hidden darkness, unhealed pain, and fear are pushing through the internal barriers into full view of the conscious mind. This can manifest as tremendous torrents of mental and emotional pressure that greatly increases the perceptions of fear and pain, anxiety and suffering that are being experienced in our lives. When we are clouded by the lens of fear, we are easily overwhelmed and can feel mentally paralyzed as a result of the bombardment of fear running its frequency throughout our nervous system. During the dark night of the soul, many people do not have clarity on the actual causal source of where their fear and pain impulses are coming from. Much of what is being experienced now is being greatly amplified through the hidden fear, buried trauma, and emotional wounds from our past. We cannot run away from darkness, and we cannot hide from our hidden and buried fears any longer. This month we study the perceptions of fear so that we can see the macrocosm agenda of using the frequency of fear to increase darkness in our world and create mind control slaves. To reclaim our sanity and spiritual freedom, we must make the effort to overcome fear. The frequency of fear represents physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bondage. It destroys the capacity for expanding light into our consciousness while it produces slavery in the mind. Unrestrained fear is a destroyer. It destroys love. It destroys trust. It destroys life. It destroys relationships, and it destroys people. For this purpose, spreading fear-based mind control and dark spirits to hijack the subconscious thoughts and conscious belief systems of the masses is the primary consciousness manipulation tool of the negative alien agenda and the controllers. All Earth inhabitants have been conditioned to run fear-based thoughts as the default setting in the subconscious mind in order to attract and grow even more darkness. It takes personal will and commitment to understand how fear works in the hidden shadows of darkness, in order to find the strength to fully transform it into light. All of us have the internal power to transform darkness into light. Being courageous enough to face our deepest and darkest fears and be willing to put forth the effort to overcome them is the path we all must take to secure our consciousness freedom during the ascension cycle. Overcoming fears is an important spiritual lesson in higher consciousness development. We must address fears from the place of observation in order to demystify them and see where they are actually coming from. When we have the courage to address our hidden fears, we are facing the hidden places of darkness that have existed in parts of ourselves. To overcome fear, we must comprehend the real reasons we feel afraid and realize that our fears are pointing to the places within us that need attention, places that need unconditional love and spiritual understanding in order for us to continue to evolve and grow. Fear stunts our forward progress and emotional growth. It blocks our interaction with our inner spirit, and it generates disharmony in our relationship with God. Right thinking in facing fear. At this critical juncture during the bifurcation shift, each person chooses if they want to exist in spiritual bondage or freedom. This decision begins with gaining control over the mind, to remove blockages through the willingness to face darkness and overcome fear. This is the decision to commit to the process of organizing our lifestyle, to prioritize our evolution towards developing a deeper connection with God in our prayerful request to help us overcome darkness in order to achieve spiritual freedom. This comes with the necessity of reprogramming our mind into right effort and right thinking, and to remove all that fear content which obstructs the relationship with our spirit from fully bonding. Right thinking gives us the personal power to remove the state of our suffering. All judgments, fears, and interpretations have to be suspended, and when they occur, they are registered for observation and then let go and released. We need to dissect the frequency of fear in all the ways it impacts our subconscious attitudes and behaviors by paying attention to how we think and interpret our world through the inner dialogue we have with ourselves. Fear programs must be extracted from out of the body and cleared from controlling our consciousness by paying attention to what we must learn from the lessons that come from the fear. Fear shows us the spiritual lessons we have yet to master inside of ourselves, as it demonstrates where darkness is blocking us in finding harmony in our direct relationship with God. How much effort will you place on learning how to face fears and stop them from controlling your mind and controlling your life in order to be free? When our minds can only think about surviving perceived threats, we are easily controlled and manipulated through blind spots created from our own fears. This defines the state of mental bondage and suffering. Through perpetual states of feeling fear and anxiety, our critical thinking, executive function, and emotional self-regulation skills that help us to resolve problems in our life are essentially eliminated. We are unable to face challenges and solve problems effectively when fear lives in our mind. Overcoming fear is the main lesson. We have to regain control over our mind and be able to accurately assess ourselves in our surroundings. Overcoming fear also contains vital keys in becoming the director of our own lives, as well as leading us to achieve mental, emotional, and spiritual freedom, or a life without suffering. When we overcome fear, we can break free from impulsive reactions that are triggered from domination-based tactics used in the everyday world, and from manipulators that use aggression and intimidation in order to take control over our mental perceptions and emotional reactions. From this awareness, we can see these interactions as lessons for mastering our personal growth, which we gain incredible spiritual strength from. We live in a mind-controlled world that uses fear-based perceptions to socially engineer slavery. What steps can you take now to begin to free yourself from the patterns of mental bondage and personal suffering, forming strong mental skills for recontextualizing fear and improving your ability to emotionally self-regulate? What spiritual lessons does fear reveal to you now? Frequency of fear and feeling unsafe. The frequency of fear is what makes people feel threatened and unsafe in the world, as well as feel disconnected and separated from other people, which generates disunity in the world. Disunity breeds self-deception, false perceptions, and many negative ego character flaws that generate relationally unsafe people, people with a lack of empathy or ethical conduct that have a tendency to deeply criticize, blame, or judge others. When fear rules us, darkness rules us. It also rules our relationships, which extinguishes the possibility for sharing deep human heart connections and forming empathic and loving bonds. Please take note of how fear is rooted in darkness and can destroy ethical conduct, respect, and empathy for others very easily. Fear destroys the hope for unified cooperation to exist between people, which breaks down compassionate communication that could be directed towards problem-solving greater issues that impact all of humanity. One controller-type person that uses fear to manipulate others for power can easily destroy the accumulated unity, positivity, and trust earned in an entire organization or community in one fell swoop. Thus, fear is the main manipulation tool of the controller archetype that is designed to generate perceptions of being threatened and feeling unsafe in the company of others and in any kind of social setting. It also produces relationally unsafe people who are generally unethical, disrespectful people that lack empathy for others. Essentially, unsafe people have weak character qualities that tend to spread fear and disunity, which make other people feel unsafe while in their presence. Many unsafe people have developed walls to distance themselves from others because of their hidden fears that stem from unhealed personal trauma. All of us have been in the company of an unsafe person and noticed how uncomfortable and tense we may feel while in their presence. When we cannot be authentic and truthful in the presence of another because we fear they will judge, persecute, or attack us for revealing ourselves, we feel deeply uncomfortable, drained, and unsafe when we are in their presence. Many relationally unsafe people are ruled by their fears, and many of their reactions and impulses are made unconsciously through their unhealed mental or emotional triggers. Let's bring to mind some fear-based negative ego qualities that create relationally unsafe people. People we cannot be completely truthful around. Without fearing, we will suffer some kind of repercussion, attack, or punishment. Unsafe people can be judgmental, blaming, manipulative, dishonest, narcissistic, emotionally unstable, irresponsible, gossips, gaslighters, control freaks, backstabbers, demanding, and entitled with superior attitudes. Sounds like a lot of darkness is present in those behaviors, doesn't it? When in the company of people that demonstrate these fear-based negative ego qualities, we may need to create strong boundaries and set the terms of our interaction with them. In some cases, we may need to sever the connection entirely. There is generally nothing positive that will come from continually feeding destructive, harmful, or abusive relationship patterns that refuse to heal or evolve. We have to plant seeds where there is fertile soil if we want a garden to grow. And to shift out of the negative polarity of fear, one may need to pull weeds or walk away from that relationship pattern as an act of self-love and self-preservation. However, if we habitually feel unsafe with others, it may be we need to demystify the reasons we feel afraid and discern the difference between people that demonstrate unsafe behaviors and those who demonstrate responsible and safe behaviors. This also means that if we feel unsafe, it is our spiritual duty to build safety within ourselves by developing inner strength based in the higher qualities that make us a safe person to be around. Strong spiritual foundation is built upon the cornerstone of moral character development and building trust inside and outside for ourselves. Trust is built upon the consistent ethical behaviors of moral conduct where people are treated with equal respect and kindness and allowed to be who they are without repercussion. As much as you may feel unsafe with others, are you yourself a safe person for others to be around? Many times, what we fear in others is also the hidden unconscious behavior that we have not cleared from within our own deepest selves. Until we are willing to look at these hidden fears, we can also easily project or transfer these fears onto other people. As a basic guideline for extracting fears by replacing negative qualities with positive qualities is monitoring day-to-day thoughts and behaviors. We can look to God's sovereign free behavior or simply adhere to the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated and intend to build self-esteem through esteeming actions. At some point, it is helpful to realize that the current accepted reality of negative ego behaviors and the frequency of fear has been used against people of the earth as a psychological weapon to weaken them. Fear is broadcasted everywhere in our environment, and this has produced relationally unsafe people all around us. Fear weakens moral character, and it stunts the higher attributes of generosity, kindness, and tolerance for others. The manufacture of endless enemies in the mainstream media maintains the mass perception of continual threats, which condition more fears and learned helplessness into the unconscious mind and pain body of humanity. The fear broadcast drills down into our personal lives, infecting our thoughts, behaviors, and relationships with the frequency of fear. The frequency of fear produces feelings and perceptions that we are unsafe with others, unsafe inside ourselves. Knowing that we live on a planet imprisoned through the mass broadcast of the frequency of fear can be helpful to disentangle us from the mainstream fear broadcasts and fear-based reactions of people around us. Refuse to take on and wear the frequency of fear running in the exterior. When we can see the fear agendas operating in the external, we can go within and sift through what is sourcing from within. Becoming aware of what fears may have been taken on through being with fear-based people, as well as noting the outer agendas that use forms of electronic harassment and media-based mind control. Establishing safety to overcome fear. If we are to begin to recognize the qualities that define safe people and safe relationships, we need to first understand what a safe person is and why we need that kind of safety to overcome fear. We need people in our life that will be honest with us, telling us where we are creating harm and potentially where we may need to change in order to improve ourselves. We need friends that walk according to the truth and are accepting of us, yet they are honest about our weaknesses and faults without condemning us. Relationships in which people use shame, guilt, or condemn us for our actions are ultimately destructive and traumatizing, which does not produce emotional or spiritual growth. These are the unsafe people that require us to be different than who we are in order to be accepted and conditionally loved by them. Conditional love that must be earned is useless. It is a made-up projection from the negative ego demands and is not real love. If we do not have this kind of safe person around us yet, we can become that person for ourselves and others. As we intend to clear fears and improve our character, we attract similar people. Safe people can be fully present with others, connecting at deep and intimate levels. Safe people can speak truth to one another without being offended or taking things personally. Safe people give others the opportunity to grow and become their highest expression for them as God intended. Safe people create loving and positive feelings and inspire good works, such as being in service to others. Safe people create relationships that allow people to be as they are and draws us closer to feel unity and connection with all of life. In order to heal our mental and emotional body to overcome deep fears, we must know how to establish safety within ourselves and recognize what makes us feel unsafe. Taking good care of our body, having a consistent meditation or spiritual practice to become more inner-directed, avoiding exposure to self-harming behaviors, and learning how to manage fear or trauma reactions is essential to being safe within yourself. The first step is to identify what makes us feel safe and stable, and to do those things every day. We must make an effort to identify what choices we do have and make changes in our environment that can increase our sense of safety and comfort while in our physical space. Assess the physical and emotional safety of your environment and realize it may be necessary to remove people or situations from your life who are entrenched in destructive and harmful behaviors in order to make the necessary changes to your lifestyle. When we are more competent in emotional self-regulation, our inner safety is enhanced so that trust can be formed as we discover that we really do have the resources inside of us for feeling comforted and safe. Imposters manipulate fear perception. An important part of improving our feeling of safety is improving our emotional competency to recognize that negative emotions in ourselves and others greatly cloud our discernment and interpretation of events. If people only see reality through the lens of fear, most of the time, their interpretation is based on false evidence appearing real. Fear is the manipulation tool of imposters. When we have the capability to emotionally self-regulate, appropriate communication is not avoided through unhealed fears triggering some unwanted emotion. We all can learn to free ourselves from fear-based thoughts and emotions like anger, bitterness, resentment, retaliation, and other destructive emotions that cause hurt and pain. Yet everywhere we go in this world, we will get the opportunity to see that dark forces continually manipulate those same fears in others in order to gain control over them. All imposters and dark forces, human or non-human, that have the primary interest in exerting power and control or taking the superior position to rule over others will attempt to manipulate our darkest and deepest fears, most of which are hidden from our conscious mind. This is how the third dimensional system works on planet Earth, as long as it remains in the hands of the controllers that desire to keep humanity in servitude. Many humans have subconsciously taken on the fear-based predator mind belief systems that were given to them from alien mind control for the purpose of consciousness enslavement. As long as we allow fear to exert control over us, these dark forces that are visible and non-visible will use fear tactics at every opportunity to manipulate our mental perceptions into fear so that we remain in bondage and enslaved. This is why it is imperative that we do the self-inquiry process to drill down and source our personal fears and anxieties, and to observe our surface thoughts and behaviors, because we hide what we fear the most. How we can see our hidden fears is through our impulses, the things we blurt out, or the inner dialogue we catch in our mind. What remains hidden and suppressed can manipulate us without our knowing that we are being controlled by forces in the external. Dark forces manipulate all the content of our hidden fears, and we all are exposed to some level of this dark manipulation in the world. Bondage loops of fear. When we break down the main causes of experiencing fear in our life, we must assess which side of the negative polarity we are in, and where we have the most vulnerability to be exploited. Fear is used to create victims and victimizers that exchange places with each other to form bondage loops within the same polarity. People live in fear, feeling they are victims, when their perpetrators also live in fear as the victimizers. It is an interchangeable bondage loop that cannot be broken until you can see what side of the polarity that you play into. To break the cycle of fear-based bondage loops, we have to stop playing out that pattern of the negative polarity based in fear, and we must reach out for the unconditional love of God. Many people that are living with unhealed subconscious fears vacillate between feeling threatened by fears and then lashing out at others to regain the sensation of having personal control over their environment. Are we living with subconscious fears and perceptions of outer threats so that we manipulate and control the environment and others in order to feel more secure? Do we experience sensations of fear and mental paralysis often in our day-to-day thoughts and emotions? When do we react and use fear to get what we want from other people or situations? What are the causal events and the real reasons that we feel triggered in fear or feel threatened? The first step is recognizing where fear has bondage loops in the exchanges we make that have some kind of control over us. By taking an honest inventory of what places inside of us are feeling fear, we can then study the reasons why we feel this fear and how we react to it. To overcome fear, we must study ourselves, witness our mental thoughts and emotional reactions to other people, places, and things. The negative polarity in the frequency of fear matches the vibration that attaches to black energy and dark spirits. All people that indulge in unrestrained and uncorrected negative emotional states of fear will attract demonic or dark spirits, and these negative spirits generate energetic blockages and cords in our light body. This can greatly amplify sensations of chaos and anxiety internally within the body because there are hitchhikers hanging on. The spirits of mental bondage. All of us must learn how to overcome our fears, which dissolves the darkness that exists within the layers of our mind, so that we can become free of mental bondage. When we are no longer controlled by fear-based belief systems and reactions, we can stop allowing fear bondage loops and the dark spirits they attract to make an internal dwelling inside our bodies, minds, and emotions. When we have cleaned out these internal dark dwellings, the spaces where there was darkness are now filled with light. In this state, there is a tangible experience of mental and emotional freedom. There are no more automatic impulses that internalize the frequency of fear or darkness. You know that you are not that. The most common fear bondage loops take root in the pain body from places where fear generated walls of separation. Behind these walls are the most common core fears and dark spirit attachments that produce great suffering in the mind and emotions of human beings. It's time to tell the hitchhikers to take a hike. The spirit of unworthiness is a lack of self-love and self-acceptance that is the result of an internal battle with one's own personal image. When we feel unworthy, we are hiding beliefs that we are not good enough, fears of inadequacy and failure. powerlessness, which are the result of false mental images of perfection or holding to standards that are not realistic. We may harbor hidden feelings of unworthiness because we feel separate and that we do not belong, and that we did not rise to achieve goals that were thrust upon us by other people. The spirit of self-entitlement is to compensate for unworthiness and feeling powerlessness. The other side of unworthiness is self-entitlement. It is the belief that you deserve special privileges or to be given something without personal effort or having to earn it, imposing unrealistic demands onto others, and feeling sorry for yourself when you don't get what you want. Healing focus is practicing self-love and self-acceptance, calling upon the spirit of unconditional love and humility. The spirit of guilt is the feeling of responsibility or remorse for doing something that is believed to be bad, such as a perceived offense, crime, wrongdoing, whether it is real or imagined. The spirit of shame is the painful feeling that we are a bad person, arising from the consciousness of something that happened and that we believe is disgraceful, wrong, or evil that could have been carried out by oneself or another person. Guilt and shame usually interchange together with the fear-based beliefs that somehow we are bad, or we did something that made us a bad person. We may believe God is punishing us. The spirit of self-righteousness defends hidden fears of guilt and shame, generally justifying actions or believing that what you did was morally right and justifiable even when it generated harm. Self-righteous people are intolerant of others and take a morally superior attitude to defend their ego position in regard to their belief systems. They may feel so guilty about something they did that they preach to others about the evils of their own offenses without disclosing it, making them a hypocrite. Healing focus, practicing self-forgiveness, self-compassion, and holding the observer point. We must find ways to let go of the painful past and know that right now in this moment, we can draw on our inner power by being fully present. Call upon the spirits of Christ. The spirit of lack of trust is not believing or trusting in ourselves, that we lack something that we need and lack confidence in our own abilities to make it through life's challenges. The spirit of self-doubt is from the chronic lack of confidence that holds us back from leading our life and sensing opportunities where we can be more authentic people. Lack of trust and self-doubt are both poison to the mind and related to emotional issues that hide problems with self-esteem and self-respect. The spirit of arrogance is the other side that makes up for hidden self-doubt and lack of self-esteem, the quality of being a know-it-all, or believing that you know more than everyone else and that you are capable of something that you really are not. Arrogance is incredibly selfish, and it tends to generate tremendous amounts of destruction and harm in the world without having a conscience that feels remorse. Healing focus, building safety, trustworthiness, and empathy within the self. Call upon the spirit of purity and the spirit of humility. The spirit of betrayal is a deeply painful fear hidden in the collective consciousness. It is the pain felt when being deceived and then betrayed by those you trusted and loved the most. It is a violation of trust and bond. Spiritual betrayal is one of the most toxic and emotionally damaging fears, based on being betrayed by that which had represented God, Spirit, or holiness in the belief systems of that person. The spirit of abandonment is the fear of being deserted and left alone to fend for yourself, suffering with a great loss and the pain of grieving. It can be the consequence of betrayal. Many people continue to play out sides of betrayal and abandonment with each other in the sexual misery programming. Abandonment stems from our deepest subconscious fears that we have been totally abandoned by our real parent, our God parent, who left us here alone to face the darkness. The spirit of fear in intimacy is the defense mechanism that avoids emotional closeness and vulnerability with other people as a result of the fear of emotional demands that may be required and the hidden fears that, once invested, the relationship may cycle into patterns of betrayal and abandonment. Healing focus, building a strong core with self-care, compassionate communication for requesting emotional needs and resolving intimate relationship conflicts while setting healthy boundaries. Call upon the spirits of Christ and the spirit of unconditional love and kindness. The spirit of anger is a strong emotional reaction that may occur when people feel violated, victimized, or their personal boundaries have been crossed, or they suffered losses. Anger commonly leads to toxic feelings of resentment and bitterness. The spirit of rage is an intense and growing anger in which people lose control over their impulses and act out destructively. Many times in expressing anger and rage, people have short-term or partial entity possessions that continue to feed the destructive impulses that lead to violence. Rage is the most dangerous risk for full satanic possession. The spirit of contempt is the result of anger that forms the belief that something or someone is beneath consideration and having disdain and disgust for them. Not letting go of past anger and resentments can breed contempt and bitterness towards others, believing they are subhuman or of lower status. Healing focus, pay attention to reactions and instead make the choice to respond with higher emotion. Dedicate to find ways to create calmness, stillness daily, to relieve angry emotions, focusing on impulse control. Call upon the spirits of Christ and the spirits of kindness, patience, and forbearance. The spirit of fear is the feeling of being afraid of some kind of threat or danger, real or imagined. Many people are numb from feelings of fear through freeze reactions, which is activated in the nervous system when fight-flight responses are exhausted. The fear response in our sympathetic nervous system initiates a physiological reaction in response to a perceived harmful event, attack, or threat to survival. The spirit of denial is used to escape the reality of unpleasant fears or dangers by stating they do not exist through the refusal to address them. Sometimes people may admit to the fear or danger, but deny the responsibility to deal with the situation by blaming someone or something else. Transferring responsibility of your own emotional reactions to others is referred to as projection. Healing focus. Be willing to admit fears and be honest with yourself. When you see the fear as lessons for personal growth without judgment, you can choose to heal the fear. Denial of fears or denying unpleasant situations will only make them worse. Commit to practice loving kindness meditations directed to yourself and others. Reconcile your relationship with God. Call upon the spirits of Christ and the spirits of discipline, kindness, patience, and truth. The spirit of entrapment is to feel a sense of being caught in a trap, being tricked and deceived into something that has grave consequences, feeling abandoned by God. The spirit of enslavement is a system in which principles of property are applied to people, where individuals own, buy, and sell other humans as a form of property. We learn about the negative alien agenda, and it is clear that hidden in our collective subconscious and psyche, all of humanity is aware at some level we are not free beings on the earth, and that we live in a global system of slavery. Facing how we were enslaved and what really has happened in human history, and reclaiming our truth is the only path to liberate ourselves. The spirit of deception is a vital part of perpetrating psychological warfare in denial and dishonesty to entrap and enslave. It is the act of propagating beliefs in things that are not true, or not the whole truth, as in half-truths or omission. Deception can involve disguise, propaganda, and sleight of hand, as well as distraction, camouflage, or concealment. There is also self-deception, as in actions that are duplicitous. Healing focus. Developing courage to face the current terrain on planet Earth as a system of world slavery and world suffering. Educate yourself on human trafficking, sex slavery, and disaster economies built upon human suffering. We are in a spiritual war, and we must find ways to reconcile our relationship with God and connect with our inner spirit. We find true freedom when we remove fear and disunity with God, and then can experience God ever presently with us. Call upon the spirits of Christ and the spirit of truth and freedom to vanquish any areas where there may be dark deception in your life. Fear builds demonic houses. The impostors attempt to increase the bondage loops of the spirits of fear in the minds of people who are building demonic houses within their consciousness from their own mind and fear-based thought forms. When the body, mind, and heart are corrupted by repeated fear-based thoughts, the internal structure to house these energies, these qualities of demonic spirits, will reside in the mind and consciousness body. These lower quality spirits manifest tremendous pain and suffering and are also called satanic or Luciferian forces. In severe cases of repeated destructive spiritual behavior, this can evolve to a thought form possession around a certain theme, such as addiction. The controllers know that in order to maintain a system of consciousness slavery, they must devise a control-based society in which people will obey power structures without the ability to question authority or ensure accountability of actions. When people believe in the fear-based programming set up as belief systems in the third-dimensional world, they easily act as the border guards of the Matrix. They are willing to self-enforce unethical laws on others, no matter how corrupt or tyrannical the society. The most important tool for any controller being that desires to have total power over others in order to steal global resources is to manipulate fear in the minds of people. Whether that narrative of fear is real or imagined is of no consequence, as the mass perception of fear is the only thing that matters. Through the promotion of mass perception of fear, a controller may conquer nations, conquer territories, and conquer an entire planet. We must see the fear-based programming operating in the global scape and understand how it is used in the macrocosm for producing human slavery in order to free ourselves of the personal fears that make us suffer, building demonic houses that block our highest expression. Executive function and emotional self-regulation. While most of humanity is unaware of the darkness that exists in fear-based perceptions that govern the decisions they make, it robs them of the executive function required in having the cognitive control that is needed to help them function more effectively in every area of their lives. If a person does not have self-discipline or control over their own mental processes and impulses, it impairs their ability to be an independent thinker, which allows for autonomy over the direction of their own life. This means their life is not their own. They are unable to emotionally self-regulate and assess the environment. They are weakened in their ability to monitor their thoughts and behaviors that assist in the attainment of their personal goals. When a person refuses to be responsible for their thoughts and behaviors, they are run by their external perceptions and fears and are generally being easily manipulated by other people or dominating forces. Essentially, consistent fear-based thoughts impair executive function and cognitive control, which weakens brain function and mental processes over time, and is similar to brain impairment from an injury. When fear-based thinking is not corrected, it can lead to many mental disorders such as learning disabilities and attention deficit, as well as amplifications of psychic attack and dark interference. Learning disabilities impair people from adapting their behaviors in order to gain different results in their life situation. It is the inability to evaluate and organize information that allows a person to accurately assess their surroundings and respond to it effectively. The frequency of fear is a toxic stress that has damaging effects on behavior, as well as the nervous system and brain chemistry, weakening the frontal lobe and impairing a range of mental processes. It is important to understand that fear-based thinking is highly toxic, and that wrong thinking and negative attitudes skew perceptions into common symptoms of classic learning disabilities. Fear damages the brain's ability to receive and process information. It impairs perception and intuition. On the ascending roadmap to self-ownership, we must grasp the spiritual lessons of fear that we must overcome. In overcoming fear, we can improve our brain function and mental processes that enable positive behaviors that help us to make healthy and balanced choices for ourselves and our families. When we can clear fear and instead focus attention, meditate, and hold observer point, it strengthens our mental flexibility so that we can filter out distractions, retain information, prioritize tasks, and control impulses. All people have the potential to develop these mental skills and improve their brain function by being provided with support in growth-promoting environments. This is how any person can regain strong executive function skills and emotional self-regulation, which increases coherent mental and emotional body integration. Ego annihilation and fear of death. The predator mind, or negative ego, is a mental fear program that runs on the frequency of fear. It stimulates the experience in the body that the personality is under some kind of threat, which surfaces emotional fears of personal annihilation or death. These many fears rise up from the subconscious and pain body, which generate automatic impulses and reactions when they are denied space to be neutrally witnessed in the conscious mind. When fears are denied or suppressed, they create mental barriers and emotional aberrants, or places in our mental and emotional body that collect dead energy, which further generates more accumulated pain in the body. As a result of denial in facing deep fears, a false identity is assumed to defend its position, placed in the front of the conscious mind as a coping mechanism to continually deflect the fears on the surface. Ultimately, every fear that we experience is hardwired into the negative ego program, which is designed to stimulate subconscious terror about perceived threats against our existence. If we better understand that negative ego fear programming is the design used to produce and manufacture slavery, then we are able to see that our personal fears are actually the mechanism used on planet Earth to keep us trapped in bondage. If we allow fears to take us over, we are allowing ourselves to be trapped and enslaved by them. Essentially, the fear program that is the negative ego was manufactured by the negative aliens to capture souls and make them slaves through the continual feedback loop of broadcasting fear and death. The negative ego layers has autonomic trigger buttons in the pain body to release sensations of psychological emotional terror throughout our nervous system, so that we feel so shocked and numbed out by the fears that we refuse to face them. When we are identified with our mind as the source of individuality, we are disconnected from our spiritual source and authentic higher self. And as a consequence, we will continually experience looping thoughts that trigger emotional fears and anxiety. When we face our fears by making the pattern conscious in our awareness, we are able to neutrally witness them. In that moment, you are disidentifying with that pattern of fear as you. In the neutral witness process, we bring the unconscious aspects of our darkest fears to the surface of our mind in order to shed light upon them, which many times will dissolve the negative pattern and the emotional charge associated with the fears. Ultimately, when we disidentify with our fears and we disidentify with the thoughts in our mind, we can express our thoughts and feelings with clarity and coherence. But there is no difference in what we have said that impacts our sense of self. When we can express ourselves without believing the mind is what defines who we are, we can express ourselves fully, whether it's labeled right or wrong, or whether others have judged you for what you have said. None of this has bearing upon your sense of self and your deeper connection. In fully resolving our fears, we will need to make peace in our beliefs and feelings around death. The conflicts we have with death are deeply connected to our unresolved spiritual conflicts and our relationship with God. We all encounter transition phases in life that are similar to enduring the death process. These are defined through the cycles that deeply transform us, marking our stages of spiritual development that show up as milestone events along our life path. All of us will undergo the transition phase of death, and it is important that we prepare ourselves for that inevitable next stage of our consciousness journey. Addressing fears of death. There are many different ways to perceive the death passage through the lens of many different belief systems. What is important is that you explore your own personal beliefs and experiential knowledge about the death process and come to the place within yourself that you have made peace with death and dying, which is also the primary conflict to heal in order to overcome fears. One of the most paralyzing fears that humans have inherited from the process of negative alien agendas consciousness wiping is that we are terrified of the unknown and what happens after death. This is the result of having our real spiritual identity and history taken away and not remembering who we are as multidimensional beings. People that have suffered severe trauma or abuse have much more intense crisis of faith that fuel fears related to unresolved spiritual conflicts around the death process. If in the last year you have felt an intense rising of inner fears and anxiety that has become unmanageable and miserable, a helpful exercise will be to spend time resolving the source of fears as related to addressing personal fears related to death. When we prepare ourselves for the death process, we understand the death of the ego mind, and this is an important part of our commitment to developing our consciousness on the spiritual journey. Most people do not think of what they will experience or feel when they reflect on what they have done with their life on earth, when they have transitioned to the next dimension. When communicating with earth-based humans that have passed their body, the most prevalent experience I found was regret. Regret that they did not do more with their life. Regret they did not unconditionally love everyone. Regret that fear stopped them from achieving important events that would have changed their timeline and improved the lives of future generations. Life goes on after we drop the physical body, and it is as real as you can feel yourself right now. It is even more real than our lifetimes spent on earth. Physiology of fear. When we understand how fear is created in the body, it is helpful in releasing the grip of anxiety and fear patterns. Now let's discover how the body's physiology is affected by fear and trauma and how that is exploited by dark forces. The hardware, 3 brains and nervous system. Our biology has 3 distinctly different processors of energy and information, 2 conscious and 1 functioning below radar. We are aware of our thoughts and emotions, but we are less aware of what the survival brain is doing below our conscious radar and how this is affecting the way we feel. The survival brain is the one that takes your hand off the stove before the other 2 brains realize that you have burned your hand. It is incredibly fast at responding to what is happening in our environment in order to keep the body safe. Each human body comes with a preloaded software program that says, "We are keeping this body alive." So what is going on in the lower brain, the subconscious areas below the conscious mind radar? The lower brain or subconscious mind basically runs in 3 modes: relaxed, fight, flight, and freeze. Again, to keep it simple, in our newsletter, we have used a traffic stoplight as a model. When we are in green, we are relaxed, and our heart and respiration is slow. We can digest our food, we can nap, we enjoy being with loved ones, and we can relate to them. The moment the lower brain feels there is danger, it moves the biology into yellow. The vagus nerve shuts down all the organs below the diaphragm and speeds up the ones above the diaphragm. We get an immediate increase of available energy or superhuman strength in order to escape danger. This is an amazing thing that the human body can do in a split second. Our bodies were designed to do this for very brief periods of time. We don't want to get stuck in the danger zone of yellow where we cannot digest our food, we cannot sleep, and we cannot enjoy or relate to our loved ones. There are usually two reasons we get stuck in fight, flight. We are living in an unsafe situation, and the accurate assessment is that we are in danger or feeling threatened, or we may have an unresolved trauma from the past, which the lower brain feels is happening now in the present moment. Being in the red zone is more rare. This is where the lower brain perceives the body is not going to survive the experience and shuts it down. The body becomes immobilized to play dead and is anesthetized to minimize suffering. The consciousness or soul can actually leave the body, be separate or dissociated from it. Again, this is an amazing biological accomplishment as this happens in a split second. We see this with high-impact trauma, with early and chronic abuse, such as satanic ritual abuse, and in war and torture. The eyes are vacant, the voice is monotone, and the body is lifelessly still, meaning there is no fidgeting, gesturing, or normal movement in the body. Self-assessing. Since our human family is now living in the yellow zone so much of the time, let's look more closely at the spectrum of yellow and the difference between the fight and flight side or the victim-victimizer signals in the body. We're looking at increasing levels of activation, which means increased levels of available energy. Using a scale of 1 to 10, we can have low-level activation, which is a feeling of unease on the flight side and irritability on the fight side. In the mid-range, we may have anxiety on the flight side and anger on the fight side. At the end, we have panic and rage, which are getting closer to the threshold where the body switches into freeze or red. Creating conditions. The issue with the survival brain is that we cannot fake it out. If we want to relax, we actually have to create the conditions for the physiology to move into green in order to relax. If we live with a predator, if we work under a predator, if we do not have our basic needs met, we're going to be in yellow. So part of being able to clear fear means making lifestyle choices that help the brain and nervous system register that we are safe. Implicit memory. Current estimates are that the lower brain is taking in about 40,000 data bits per moment. This is what we refer to as the hard drive or our unconscious mind. It is recording everything, far too much material to push into our conscious awareness. We get an estimated 25 to 35 of these data bits registering on a conscious mind level. This is called implicit memory rather than explicit or conscious memory. The hard drive records past threats into a special category so that if a similar cluster of data bits arises that were present when something traumatizing happened, we get the jump on it and move into the yellow zone more quickly. The shaping of collective. In understanding implicit memory, or the content which is recorded but not conscious, it is easy to see how this could be manipulated by those who would like to keep people in fear and keep our physiology in the yellow zone. In the yellow zone, we are less able to respond to the present moment. Our bandwidth of awareness gets narrower as we look for the external threat or reason for our tension and discomfort. We no longer see beauty, feel comfort, or experience balance in our life. It is as if looking for danger gets to go to the front of the line, skipping in front of all other perceptions coming in. It isn't difficult to see how our news and entertainment is purposely designed to keep us at a constant 6 or 7 in the levels of activation into the fight-flight. They are getting more adept at reaching for our adrenal glands and giving them a squeeze. The culture of keeping people in the yellow zone of fight-flight has been in the making for a long while. Traumatic memory. A woman who was sexually assaulted in a cedar room may develop an aversion to the smell of cedar without making the connection. Whenever she smells cedar, the survival brain will shift her into yellow as a precaution. She may start to feel anxiety without knowing why, which changes how she moves through the rest of her day. Until this trauma is cleared from the hard drive, these triggers interfere with her ability to respond to the now moment. Trauma is not in the event, it is in the nervous system. The traumatic memory will keep showing up in the present until it is cleared. Manipulation. In a similar way, the negative alien agenda may try to activate or use the implicit memory packets we have of past personal traumas. They may also embed false memories in our hard drive so that we have traumatic responses to things that should not trigger us at all. They also play on collective trauma that is in the planetary field memory. They may try to trigger a mass reaction by activating a collective implicit memory packet of the Lemurian Holocaust or Atlantean Cataclysm. This works because we have no conscious memory of those events. So how could we possibly identify the source? The cellular memory of an exploding planet can be elicited at the end of the cycle without the masses knowing where their anxiety of cataclysm is coming from. In the ego personality matrix of the first 3 dimensions, this is the game being played in the nervous system. Broadcasting fear, promoting service to self, and keeping the survival brain running the show. Until we are able to clear fear, which often means clearing trauma, we are susceptible to triggers from these implicit memory packets. As we move into the soul matrix, fears have less influence, and even less in the monadic matrix. Now that the trans-time continuum is opening our access into other timelines and dimensions that were not previously available to us, people who are starting to embody the monad may find themselves deeply triggered. They may be dealing with new implicit memory packets from other aspects of their identity, starting to be recollected and returned. Recently, in the ES community, there has been a group processing of Lyran memories. If this happens, understand it for what it is. We are actually just hitting larger chunks of the traumatic memories from timeline trigger events further out in the timelines. During stress, back to the basics. This information is shared from the perspective that if we can identify when our nervous system is tweaked and our physiology has shifted into fight, flight, we can take the necessary steps to shift out of it. Being better informed gives us more choice in how we respond. When we find ourselves stressed out, it is important to slow down and create the conditions for the lower brain to assess that we are actually safe again. This releases the physiology from hyperstimulation and allows the body to get back to green and relax. Starseeds' nervous systems are highly sensitive and run a lot of frequency and may benefit from some extra supplementation. When the nervous system is feeling fried, creating some peace and quiet in order to recharge is so helpful. If the body is stuck in yellow, it burns up the body's resources much more quickly. So we are best served by taking some time out to deactivate our nervous system rather than pushing through and overriding the signals of stress. If you notice you're triggered or activated, slow down and ask yourself, what just happened? What was the trigger? If you can't connect it to something conscious, consider that it may be connected to implicit memory, possibly even from another timeline. Treat it the same. Work to clear the associated fears, to help clear the pain and trauma from the subconscious hard drive. Overcoming fear, journaling. Overcoming our deep fears can be a hurdle as they tend to gain power when they are hidden inside our mind. We are not used to going deeper and having a conversation around them or addressing them, saying them out loud, writing them down, and meditating upon them. When we can identify fear-based thoughts, triggers, and beliefs from out of our mind and put them on paper, then we have taken the first step in demystifying them, distancing from them, and diminishing the emotional charge they have upon our body. Remember that darkness and fear hide in the shadows of our mind in order to stay in control. When we bring these fears into the light of day, much of the weight and burden they carry behind the scenes dissolves. There can be a miraculous alchemy that occurs when we shift perceptions of fear into the compassionate witness of unconditional love. Observing the mental idea of the fear as it is attached to a dark, intelligent energy, and realizing that shadow fragment needs to be exposed to unconditional love and light. Don't be afraid to face the dark spirit that resides inside the fear, as when you see what has really created the fear, it is the moment you realize what was really hiding behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz. All of these fears were running the grand illusion. Write down the list of fears, how they manipulate and limit you, and intend to shift them into the love vibration in order to create safety for yourself. Now you may want to allow some space for meditation to go deeper and ask where these fears have come from, where they have originated. Pay attention to what you may notice coming up that is not true. Many times our fears are based in deceptions, from misinterpretations, and what others have told us that is actually not true. When you sense other times you felt afraid, and they are connected to the basis of current fears, send love to yourself in that timeline where you were feeling scared. Spend some time meditating on what lessons you can learn from that fear and how you can transform this experience into light and wisdom, something positive for all involved. Acknowledge that everyone has fear, and fear has purpose in our spiritual journey. It holds the most important spiritual lessons for our ultimate growth and liberation if we are willing to let it go. Appreciate all that you have undergone in your life to get this far and acknowledge the unique parts that have made you the person that you are today because you had the courage to face your fears. The story of facing our fears and overcoming them is deeply inspirational and supportive for everyone. Many enjoy and gain the benefits from the storyline on learning what others have done to gain the courage to overcome great challenges and fears in their life. Maybe you are one of those people who will share your inspiring story on how you faced darkness with courage and were able to overcome fears while on the ascending path. Please only take what is useful for your spiritual growth and discard all the rest. Thank you for your courage and bravery to be a truth seeker. Until next, stay in the luminosity of your avatar Christos Sophia heart path. Please be kind to yourself and each other with a loving heart until next month.